started.
Yeah.
As Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Chullin Daf Kuf Hey, and we will begin from Daf Kuf Dalet Amud Beis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines from the bottom of Kuf Dalet Amud Beis. And the topic today is how to eat milk and cheese and cheese and milk. Tana, we learned Tana Agra Chamud Rababa. Agra is a name. He was the father-in-law of Rababa. He taught the following brisa: Oif ugvina necholim ba pikroin, that cheese, a bird meat, and again, bird meat, according to some, is only also midrabanan, and cheese can be eaten freely back and forth. What does that mean? Hu tanalav hu oimala. He's brought the brisa and explained the brisa. What does it mean? It can be eaten freely. It means you don't have to wash your hands, and you don't have to clean your mouth. In other words, kinuach hapeh, we're going to learn, means that you eat a piece of bread to wipe the excess pieces that got stuck of whatever you were eating. So let's say you ate cheese and you want to eat the chicken afterwards. You don't have to wash your hands and you don't have to eat a piece of bread in between. Because anyway, oif and gvina are aser midrabana. But of course, if it was meat, then you would have to wash your hands and wipe your mouth out. Now, we are familiar that you have to wait 6 hours, but minhat Gemara, you didn't have to wait. You just have to clean your hands to eat one after the other and make sure that just a little bit of time passed so that the taste of meat is gone from your mouth. So they didn't give a shear for that. But you definitely needed to wash your hands if you ate meat, and then you wanted to eat cheese and wipe your mouth out. Rabbi Yitzchak bereid Rabbi Shashi ikle be Ravashi. Rabbi Yitzchak was at the house of Ravashi. Isle gevina. They brought him cheese first. Achal, he ate it. Isle briser, and then they brought him meat. Achal, he ate it. So v'loy mashi yadayim. He didn't wash his hand. Now here we're dealing with regular meat. Amr lei. So they told Rabbi Yitzchak, that only when you eat cheese and then chicken, then you don't have to wash your hand. But meat and cheese, you don't. Meat and cheese, if you ate cheese first and you want to eat a piece of meat, a rib steak, you do have to wash your hands and wipe your mouth out. Amalahu. So he explained, that is talking about by nighttime. By nighttime, you're right. You have to wash your hands. But during the daytime, you can see what's on your hands. So if you ate cheese, Medina de Gemara, and you want to eat a rib steak afterwards, so you can look at your hands. Do I have any sediment of cheese on my hands? And I guess you can feel if you have anything in your mouth. If you don't have to do anything, and you can start eating the meat. And that's what Rabbi Yitzchak did. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Bishami says, if someone ate cheese first, mikaneach. Bishami says you have to wash your mouth out with bread. Wipe your mouth out with bread. Beis Hillel says you have to use water. Mediach. You have to rinse your mouth. So my mikaneach, my mediach. What did they mean? Bishami says one thing and Beis Hillel says the other thing. We go to Amid Aleph. If you want to say, the Bishami says, you have to use bread, but you don't need to use water. Beis Hillel says, Madiach, you use water, and you don't need to use bread. So each one gave you another idea. Abzera said, you could only wipe your mouth out with bread. Now, who holds that you could use bread? Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says you can't use bread, you could only use water. So come on, who is Rab Zera explaining? Can Beis Shammai? Rab Zera would explain Beis Shammai. We never paskin like Beis Shammai. Ella, so must be, Beis Shammai, I remember Beis Shammai says, everybody agrees that you need to wipe your mouth out with bread. But Beis Shammai says, Mekaneach v'loy be'mediach. Beis Shammai says, all you need to is to use bread, and you don't need to use water. Beis Hillel says, mediach. You also have to use water. So if that's the case, Beis Hillel is saying you need 2 steps. One, wipe your mouth out with bread by swallowing a piece of bread, and then rinse your mouth out with water. And Beis Shammai says just use the bread. So Havale Mikule Beishamai, it comes out that Beishamai is lenient, Umechume Beis and Beis is more stricter. So if so, let us put this teaching in Masechta Ediyos amongst the list of the different topics where Beishamai goes lenient and Beis Hillel goes strict, and this is not listed there. Elo, Beishamai Omrim, there must be like this. Beishamai says you need to do both. Both Beis Hillel and Beishamai says you need to do both. And Beishamai means Mekanech Wuden Din Lemandiach. You need to do wiping your mouth out and also rinse your mouth. Beis Hillel says you rinse your mouth out, and of course you have to use the bread. So both of them are saying the same thing. Just one just mentioned one, one mentioned the other, but both agree to the other's opinion. So you both agree that you need to both. If you ate cheese and you want to eat meat afterwards, so then you have to use bread and rinse your mouth out. There's no argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Now, we mentioned this idea that that part of the process, if you ate cheese, you have to eat bread. The only way to wipe your mouth out well is with a rye bread. If it's made out of wheat, if it's made out of barley, no. If you're using rye bread, if it's cold, if it's hot rye bread, you can't use barley bread, and if you're using hot rye bread, that's also no good because it comes across in pieces. In other words, it doesn't wipe the mouth out good. It's too soft. And it gets stuck into your throat. It doesn't wipe, but do a full wipe. Regular rye bread or regular soft rye bread. Akusha, if you're going to use toast, that's no good because that crumbles and that's not going to wipe your mouth out. So good Wonder Bread, maybe. The Hilchasa and the halacha is b'chol mili have a kinuach. You can wipe your mouth out with anything, any type of. You can wipe your mouth, I guess, with lettuce. No, but they can't use lettuce. Maybe you could use an apple. Lavar, you can't use mikimcha flour, like a powdery substance. Tamre dates, the yarka vegetables. So that's the din. Now, till now we've talking about eating cheese first, and then you're eating meat. How much should you wait once you have to eat meat? Once you ate a meat, how much do you have to wait to eat cheese? Because once you eat meat leaves a taste in your mouth more than cheese, and it sticks into your mouth. Gets stuck in your parts of your mouth, and therefore it lingers. The taste lingers. Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan says v'loy klum. It means you got to just make sure there's no time set. You got to just make sure you don't feel the meat taste in your mouth. It's not true. Rav Chizda said, Achal basar, asa lechel gvina. When you eat meat, you can't eat cheese right after, right? As we explained, the taste of meat lingers. Gvina mutar lechel basar. And if you eat cheese, you're allowed to eat meat. So how do you say loy klum? There's no set time how much you don't have to wait at all. Alakama yisha ben gvina lebasa. How much should you wait between Ella kama yisha ben gvina lebasa for cheese and meat? Amalei v'loy klum. In other words, to actually say you don't have to wait anything. I mean, you can pop it right into your mouth. You can eat cheese and then you can eat meat right after. You don't have to wait any period of time. For meat versus if you eat meat first and then you want to eat cheese, then we say you have to wait a period of time till the taste goes away. But the Gemara didn't give it a period of time. When Rabbi Yochanan said, "V'loy klum," you don't have to wait any time. That was talking about between cheese and meat. You ate cheese first, you wipe your mouth out, and you rinse it, and then you can eat meat. That's true. But if the opposite way, Rav Chizda said, if you ate meat first, you're not allowed to eat cheese right after, and the Gemara didn't give yet a time period. Gufa. So the Gemara says like this: if you ate meat, you can't eat cheese right after. You're going to have to wait a period of time, maybe an hour, maybe more. Gvina, if you ate cheese, then you do kinuach and hadacha, and mutar lechel basa, then you can eat meat. Amalei Rav Chizda, Rav Acha Rav Yosef, Rav Chizda. Rav Yosef asked Rav Chizda, let us assume you have to wait 6 hours between eating meat and then once you ate meat, you can't eat cheese. You have to wait 6 hours. But let's say after 6 hours, you find basa ben shebein shanaim. You still have meat amongst your teeth. So what's the din? So Rav Chizda answered, habasa ideno ben shanaim. The meat was still in their teeth. In other words, you have to, meat in your teeth doesn't become permitted. It's still called meat. So you have to remove the meat, but then you can eat the cheese. That's what he's saying, according to the Rishonim. So that you remove the meat because you waited the you don't have the taste of meat in your mouth, in your throat, or whatever, but you still have the something in between your teeth. So take a toothpick, remove the meat, and then you don't have to wait any longer. But that meat cannot stay in your mouth in your teeth, if you're gonna eat cheese. Again, the Gemara didn't really specify how much time that if you have to eat meat, how long do you have time to eat cheese? So Ma'ukva said, when I look at how much time I wait in between meat and then eating cheese, I'm like wine I'm like vinegar compared to wine with my father. My father had these like strict stringencies, and I'm much more lenient. Dili Abba, my father, if he ate meat on one day, he would not eat cheese till the next day at Hasha at the same time. So if he ate meat for lunch on one day, he wouldn't eat cheese till the next day lunch. That's how much he was machma. I move it from one meal to another meal. So if I ate lunch, meat meal, by supper, I could eat cheese. I could eat cheese. And that's what he felt. How much time is between one meal and the other meal? So we have different opinions. Some say 3 hours, some say 6 hours, some say 5, the beginning of 6. But that's the halacha. Generally from one meal to another meal until you're hungry again. So it takes at least 6 hours for the meat to digest in your system and you get the taste out. Then you can eat the cheese again. Amar Shmuel said, Anor lahal milsa. On another matter, my father did something better than I did. When I compare myself to my father is like wine and I'm like vinegar. Why? My father would investigate his fields 2 times a day to make sure that because if you discover a damage early enough, you can prevent it from becoming a bigger damage. So he would check his possessions twice a day. I don't watch my stuff and examine my possessions only 1 time a day. Shmuel, the Tamei, the Amar Shmuel goes according to his reasons. Man decide if you check your possessions every day, mashkach astira, you'll find things to do. You'll be able to fix small damages so that it doesn't develop into big damages. So you'll spend a small amount of money now, but it protects you from a large damage. So it's very important that you have whatever it is, that you have a possession, that you have apartment or whatever, to check it often so that even though you consider it Bistul Taira, but it's protecting you from the larger damage. Abaya used to check his possessions every single day. Yom Echad, one day, he found his employer, the Dari Pascha de Ufe, he was taking some wood from and going to take it to his own storage house. In other words, he found one of his employees trying to steal something from him. Where are you taking this? I'm taking it to your house, which wasn't true. So Abaye said, the Rabbanan gave me the advice to check on my possessions every day. So I was already, they came before you and they told me to watch your possessions. And here, I don't believe you. I believe that you were taking the possessions to your own home. You're taking the wood to your own home. Vasi was watching his possessions every day, and he didn't find anything. I don't find anything wrong. Where's all this protection that Shmuel said that you got to watch your possessions every single day? One day, he saw let's say a pipe that bursted on the ground, and it was going to flood his entire field. Let's say a water pipe. Shakle glime, so he took his clothing, and he ready karche isve begavat. He ready wrapped the hole in the pipe so that no water should like squirt out. And Rama Koila, and he called for help. Also, inches sachru, and they came and they welded it, and they welded the pipe back into place. So, had he not been there and be able to save the day, it would have flooded the whole field, and he would have lost even more money. I found all the coins of Shmuel. In other words, because I listened to Shmuel, even though nothing happened on a day-to-day basis, but that one day that the pipe bursted, I was able to be there because I listened to Shmuel and protected myself from a huge financial loss. Now the Gemara says like this: Amar Avidi bar Ravin, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ashim, Ma'im Rishonim mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to wash netilas yadayim. Va'achroinim, Ma'im achroinim is chayve. It's an obligation, because the reason why we wash Ma'im achroinim is because the Gemara is going to say because there's a possibility of a toxic salt called melech sedaimus that's somehow found in regular salt on your hand. And since every meal is supposed to have salt, if you have it on your finger, if you lift it to your eyes, like this Yama Melech water, you could blind yourself, chas v'shalom. So therefore, there was an obligation. And because of that, there's no bracha to be said. Now, there's going to be another reason that the Gemara is going to say that when you wash Mayim Achrayim, you take off some bad, I don't know, maybe a bad spirit on your hand. We'll see about that one. But generally speaking, you're washing Mayim Achrayim. It's an obligation because you got to protect yourself from not having any toxic salts on your hands. Meisvei, you're telling me Mayim Rishonim v'Achrayim chayim. The Brisa says that the Rishonim, even the Tilas Yadayim, is an obligation. And soim rishus, but the water that you use to wash your hands between one dish to the next, that's optional. But an obligation is Mayim Rishonim. And you told me Mayim Rishonim is a mitzvah, not a chayva. And says the Gemara, mitzvah legabi rishus chayva karili. When you compare Mayim Rishonim to emtsoim, to the middle waters, Mayim Rishonim is an obligation because it's a mitzvah, and emtsoim is just completely optional. But when you're comparing Mayim Rishonim to Achrayim, Mayim Rishonim is a mitzvah, but Achrayim, it becomes the obligation. So it depends on the context. Gufa, we learned in the Brisa. Mayim Rishonim v'Achrayim chayvem tzoyim rishus. Rishonim, Mayim, the first netilas yadayim, noitlim bein bekli. You could wash it in a basin. You could put the water after you wash in the basin, or bein agabe karka. You could wash on the ground, on the grass. You could wash netilas yadayim. Achrayim, ein noitlin elabakli. Mayim achrayim you could only wash into another basin. Ba'amilah ein noitlin al gabe karka. And the others say in the negative form. You can't wash directly on the ground. So it seems that you're supposed to use a keli. Both of them agree you're supposed to use a keli. My benayu. What would be the difference between the first language and the second language? Ika benayu kinsa. Can you wash it on the ground? But it's not your grass. There's ground. There is wood chips on the ground. And you're washing over wood chips. If you tell me that you could only wash Mayim Achrayim over a keli, so that's not good. If you say you could wash on wood chips, which causes the water not to puddle in one place, that's fine. Because when you wash on the ground, you cause the water to puddle in one place. And because of that, there's a ruach ra, there's like an evil spirit on it. And somehow if somebody walks on that, over that water, he'll develop an evil spirit, a ruach ra. Maybe he'll be in a bad mood. That's why if you spread it onto wood chips where it doesn't puddle in one place, according to that opinion, that's fine. Mayim Rishonim, the tilas yadayim, noitlim bein b'chamim bein mitzayim. You can wash it with hot water and cold water. Achrayim, Mayim Achrayim, ein noitlin el b'tzayim. You can only use cold water for Mayim Achrayim. Mipnei shevchamim afafayim es yadayim. The hot water softens your hands, and it doesn't remove the toxic waste that's on your hand. So you could only use for Mayim Achrayim cold water. Mayim Rishonim, noitlim bein b'chamim and mitzayim. That's what we learned. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yani, when we said that you could use for netilas yadayim hot water, It's not scalding water. It's like super hot where your hand will move back. If your hand will scald on it, or and you don't use it for mine for netilas yadayim, because Rashi says it's batlu midishtanu metaris mayim. It's not cold water. A din water is that you can use it to wash your hands. If it scalds you and you pull your hands away, you can't use it for netilas yadayim. Some say it's talking about my achronim. We learned in the Brisa, for my achronim, you could only use cold water. You can't use hot water. On this, when we say hot water for my achronim is no good, is it only if it's scalding water? If it's not scalding water, you could wash, because if it's just hot water, my achronim could remove the toxic salts. And according to this word version, the Rishonim, by my Rishonim, even if you have scalding water, mutar, it's permitted. So that's machlekes whether you can use hot scalding water from Mayim Rishonim or not. And Tzayim Rishus, we learned that there wasn't a minhag to wash netilas yadayim from between dish to dish. And that's optional. Amar Nachman lo'ishal ben tashel letashel. When you're going from one dish to another dish, let's say you're going from one meat dish to another meat dish, al tashel gvina. But if you're going from bein tafshel gvina, let's say you ate cheese and you want to eat now meat, of course there's a chayvit. You have to wash your hands and of course rinse your mouth out, because maybe some of the cheese is stuck on your hand. Amar Rav Yehuda b'rei Rav Chia b'bnei ma omer mayim achronim chayva. Why did they say mayim achronim is a chayva? Shemelach sodomis, yes, there is certain type of toxic salt, and the example that they use is yamamelech water, but it could be any type of toxic salt that somehow appears in your regular table salt, shemasamas yanayim, that makes a person blind. Omar Abaya said, don't think this is a common thing. You'll find it kikurta bekura, like one speck in a kur in a 40 pounds. You'll find one piece of salt in 40 pounds of salt. So it's not so common. But for sakana, we're very machmir. So therefore, it became a chayvet. Everybody should use mayim achronim just in case that the salt that you use has that one crystal of toxic salt. Amalei Rav Acha b'rei Rashi kol milchamai. If a person, Rav Acha b'rei Rav asked Rav Ashi a question, and I think the question is, if you work in salt, maybe your immune system developed an immunity to toxic salt. So do you have to wash your hands after if that's your job? You work in a salt mine. Amalei loy mebaya. So Rav Ashi said that's not even a question. Of course you have to wash your hands because nobody develops an immunity from this salt. Amalei Abaya. Abaya said, Reish Havamina, I would have always thought the reason why you don't wash your mayim achronim on the ground is because you want to get rid of the waste off your hand, and therefore, when you wash mayim achronim on the ground, it's because you don't do it is because the water has a smell to it, and it looks dirty because when you clean your hands, I guess they didn't eat with knife and fork, so there's food waste in that water, and that's why you don't put it on the ground. You wash mayim achronim in another vessel. Amalei Mar, so my Rabbi explained to me, it's not true. It's because even if you ate with a knife and fork and you're washing mayim achronim, don't put it on the ground, because an evil spirit is on that water. If somebody steps on that evil spirit, on that water puddle, so then the ruach ra will enter him. I don't know what that means, but maybe the other person who stepped on that water will all of a sudden become in a bad mood or something. Abaya said, I always thought that when somebody is at a meal and he's drinking, let's say you have a guy who's drinking, don't start removing stuff off the table in front of him while he's drinking, because you're going to cause the guy to choke, because he's going to want to tell you, I still need that. and you're going to cause the guy to choke. So wait till he's finished drinking. So Rabba explained to me, no, somehow that leads to a mental illness. If someone removes an object off the table of somebody who's drinking, and while the guy is watching, the person who's drinking is watching that, it could lead to a mental illness, ruach tzarada. If the guy takes it and doesn't return it, if he is going to take it and it's understood that he's going to return it right away back, less than bar, there's no problem with that. If he's going 4 amas away, more than 4 amas, if he's just taking, let's say, your ketchup to the other table, so less than bar, that's not a problem. Something that you need in your meal. Less than bar. If it's something that you don't need in your meal, that's not a problem. If you're not going to use it, if it's like something that you're not going to, it has nothing to do with the meal, then it's not a problem if you remove it. Concludes the Gemara. We'll stop over here soon. Amar Baravashi kapid afila asisa ubuchne de tavle. They were makpid not to remove off the table the pepper grinder, the spice grinder, because midi de trichlesudusahi, that's something that's needed by the meal. And again, you don't remove it off the table while somebody else is drinking because it could cause a mental illness. That's what the Gemara says. I find that if you're had a kiddush and you're eating and drinking and somebody's taking the seltzer bottle, the last seltzer bottle off the table and bringing it to another table, it could cause you a little uncomfortable. Or he takes the kugel that's on your table before the waiter served him, so that it's also uncomfortable. Anyway, we're going to continue with this Garata tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem. To briefly review what we learned today, we learned that what Rav Chizda taught us, that let's start with this way. If you're going from cheese to meat, according to both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel hold that you have to wash your mouth, rinse your mouth out, and you have to chew on a piece of bread. And what do you use for bread? Just definitely wheat bread, not hot bread, and not barley bread, etc. But the halacha, anything is good to use except flour, dates, and vegetables. When you're going from meat to cheese, then you have to wait, and because the taste of meat is still in your mouth. How much do you wait? So there were many chumras brought into the Gemara. So the chumras of the father of Mar Ukva would wait 24 hours. Mar Ukva would not eat; he would wait to the next meal. We're noyig to wait between 5-6 hours. Some wait 3 hours. Then we learned the Hilchos Nedin L'Sidayim. My Rishonim is a mitzvah, and the Chachamim, the Shmoyel Divrei Chachamim, you have to make a bracha. My Achroinim is a choiva because of a zakana. You don't make a bracha, but you have to wash it into a keli. You don't put the water onto the floor, and you can't use hot water. You can't use hot water because according to the first lashon, it actually softens your hand. It doesn't remove the toxic salt. The middle water between dishes, so is optional. But that's only if you're going from a dish of cheese to a meat. But if you're going from cheese to meat, it means you're going from 2 different types of tafshilim. Then you have to wash your hands to make sure there's no cheese stuck on your fingers. And then we just did 2 skulas. My mechroinim, you don't spill on the ground. So Abai thought that's the reason, because the water is putrid. But Rabbi explained to him, no, there's a ruach ra, there's a bad spirit on that water, and therefore you don't just put it on the ground. And the drink, and when somebody's drinking at the table, you don't remove anything that he could technically use for the meal at the table, because this will cause him a mental illness. Some say it's a migraine headache, and cause him to have migraines. And we're going to learn the other ones, Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow.